Hi everyone, and welcome to the World Watchtower's very first video. Today, we're going to cover the current events that happened in the month of July, and we're going to be giving you one from each day, starting from the 1st and going to the 31st. Keep in mind that we can only choose one for each day, so if you thought there was an important event that we didn't cover, we're sorry because we do care about it, but we just don't have room.
Starting with July 1st, the European Space Agency successfully managed to launch the Euclid Space Telescope. Its purpose was to study dark matter and energy at a location of 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth.
And moving on to July 2nd, the violent situation in France continued as protesters set fire to the house of Vincent Jeanbrun. He was a mayor of a French city. That resulted in his wife and his child getting injured.
On July 3rd, political instability in Israel worsened as Israeli soldiers stormed a refugee camp in the West Bank and killed 8 Palestinians and injured 50. Airstrikes were also launched by the Israelis.
Although July 4th is supposed to be a day where all Americans unite in pride of their culture, there was still unfortunately a total of 22 mass shootings in the United States that resulted in 20 deaths and over 100 more injuries.
Coming next on July 5th, Ihor Humenyuk, a defendant at a district court in Kyiv and a former member of the Sich battalion, dies after injuring 2 police officers in an escape attempt.
On July 6th, we've got more news from Israel as they carried out a shalom campaign against Lebanon, their northern neighbor, in response to rocket fire from the other side of that border.
On July 7th, President Bongbong Marcos of the Philippines signed a law that canceled over $1 billion of debt for farmers.
And on July 8th, we all know that deforestation has plagued the world recently, and especially the Amazon rainforest. So a lot of trees have been cut down there. But the countries who control land inside that rainforest met on this day to discuss conserving it. That includes Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, and that meeting was held in Colombia.
On July 9th, the United States Central Command announced that Osama al-Muhajir, an ISIS senior leader, was killed in Syria via a drone strike.
On the 10th of July, Spain rescued 86 people off the coast of the Canary Islands, one of their colonies, and these people were most probably coming from Senegalese boats.
Moving on to July 11th, violence in the Indian state of Manipur continued to surge as the horrible sexual assault of 2 women aroused criticism towards the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chief Minister of Manipur, N. Biren Singh.
Now, NATO met in Vilnius, the Lithuanian capital, on July 12th, and at that summit, members of NATO discussed how to bolster Ukraine's defenses and finally end their war against Russia.
On July 13th, the International Olympic Committee announced that athletes from Russia and Belarus will not receive invitations to the Summer Olympic Games in Paris and will only be able to compete as neutral athletes.
And on the 14th of July, police authorized a protest involving the burning of the Bible and the Torah, the Christianity and Judaism holy books, outside the Israeli embassy in Stockholm, Sweden, following a series of anti-Islamic demonstrations involving Quran desecration across the country, and Israeli officials urged the Swedish government to prevent the act.
The Italian Health Ministry issued a health warning for 16 cities in Italy as the European Space Agency reports that potential record-breaking temperatures of up to 48 Celsius could be reached. This temperature could also be reached in other European countries as well.
And on July 16th, in the Wimbledon men's singles final, Carlos Alcaraz defeated Novak Djokovic to bring home the gold. Congrats to him.
Moving on to July 17th, Russia refused to renew the agreement that allowed the passage of grain exports from Ukrainian ports, which had been active since July 2022.
On July 18th, an American soldier facing disciplinary action fled from the inner Korean border into North Korea.
On July 19th, a LA Powerball lottery player struck gold as he became the 3rd to win a $1 billion jackpot.
On July 20th, 3 people were killed, including the suspect himself, and a lot more were injured in a mass shooting at a construction site in Auckland, which is in New Zealand. And the Women's World Cup kicked off later that day, and they started the opening ceremony by honoring the people who died in that shooting.
On a happier note, Messi made his first North American debut for the MLS club Inter Miami CF. In the final minutes of the match against Liga MX club Cruz Azul, he scored a goal to help Miami win the game.
July 22nd, the next day, about 2,000 Magellanic penguins were found dead along Uruguay's eastern coast, and their cause of death wasn't really known, and it's still being determined. But the Environment Ministry ruled out influenza as a possibility, and overfishing might be a problem with the penguin deaths, and also cyclones and all other natural disasters, and then the sea lions and sea turtles were also dying reported in the regions.
On July 23rd, Spaniards headed to the polls to elect the members of the Cortes Generales. Alberto Núñez Feijóo's People's Party wins the election, but falls short of a clear majority, while Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's Socialist Workers' Party holds slightly more seats with its allies despite finishing second, thus resulting in a hung parliament.
Now, on July 24th, in Algeria, 34 people were killed and 26 others were injured, and thousands are evacuated during wildfires.
On July 25th, large clashes with air raids and artillery in the Ombada district in northern Khartoum leave over 16 people dead, including 2 confirmed children.
July 26th, another African country, soldiers from Niger's Presidential Guard detained President Mohamed Bazoum inside the presidential palace in Niamey, their capital. Entrances to the government ministry are also blocked, and soldiers have announced on state television that the president has been removed from power and the country's borders are closed and a nationwide curfew is declared.
On July 27th, the government of Rome, Italy, excitedly announced the discovery of Roman Emperor Nero's private theater under the courtyard of Palazzo della Rovere.
July 28th, data by the United States' National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows that the North Atlantic Ocean temperatures hit an all-time high, and to be specific, that's 24.8 degrees Celsius, around 76 degrees Fahrenheit.
On July 29th, 2 people are killed and 20 injured in a Russian missile strike on civilian infrastructure in the Ukrainian city of Sumy.
And on July 30th, in Pakistan, at least 44 people were killed in the suicide bombing in a city called Kar in the Bajur district.
On July 31st, the governments of Burkina Faso and Mali issue a joint statement saying that any military intervention in Niger to overthrow the new military junta will be considered a declaration of war against both countries.